Everybody. Happy Monday.
Good
Hopefully
morning.
it's sunny where you are and you enjoyed your weekend. We're happy to have you. We're just sorting out the last details to make sure we have all the supplies ready for you today. For today's webinar, we are joined by the always smiling Gary Zalepa, Director of Strategic Growth and Franchise Development for Century 21 Canada. And we're going a little bit more specific with our topic today, talking about teams and whether or not you're looking for a change in your business. You're thinking of joining a team, starting a team, you just don't understand them and how they're put together. We're hoping that this team program will help you understand them a little bit better. And there's no one better than Gary to give us the information. So hello, Gary.
Hello, Lee. How are you doing?
Very well, thank
Great.
you.
Great. Well, thank you for having me, and good morning to everybody, and good afternoon to those in the east with me here. And we did wake up to a sunny day, so it is nice that makes a big difference in everybody's attitudes, I think. So, yeah, today we're going to talk about teams, and whether you're thinking of joining a team, maybe you're new in real estate, and you think, just what are these teams all about? Or perhaps you're more of a veteran and you're thinking about making some changes to how you do your business, and you might be considering a team setup or organization as the way to go. And then all those questions come with that as well. What's the team look like? So hopefully today in this process we can go through some of that. I'll let everybody know that there is a good participant workbook that's available to Century 21 members. That'll be in our resource center in the resource area for you. I'll also put a link perhaps in the chat later for everybody. So we'll start off and look forward to chatting about this and maybe taking some questions. If you do have questions, just put them in the chat, and Lee will be catching those as we go. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about teams. Lee introduced me there. So our agenda is kind of a three-step process. And the first will be kind of taking a look at the team setup and how others organize their teams and the best practices in that. And the second part will take us into the HR kind of side of things. Do you have the right people? What kind of skill set? What are the job descriptions, and what things should you be thinking about there? And then the third part of our agenda will be kind of like where you take it from here, whether you're going to go forward with the team, what's your game plan going to be look like. So so I'm looking forward to bringing that to you today. So let's start with the old conversation is really the evolution of the real estate business. If you started in the business perhaps long ago when I did, the team was actually more built into the brokerage, and so things have evolved over time. And as you know, now we have individual salespeople that have decided to form a group of people together, which is kind of this team concept. And there's a different team organization probably for almost every team that I've spoken to across the country, or if I had the opportunity to coach them or manage them over time. There seems to be a little bit of a different concept for every team. So there's no one size fits all. So hopefully this process today will give you a blueprint and kind of a game plan to help you take your business through these questions and kind of diving into what you need and how your business, how you want it to look. And then you can perhaps it'll give you a game plan to implement. So let's talk a little bit about why people are doing teams. I won't spend too much time here, but really most salespeople, when they say to me, I say, well, why do you want to do the team? What's on your mind? Most of them say one of these things, right? It's they want to have a little bit more balance in their life. Perhaps they're finding they don't have enough time to do all the necessary activities in their business, and because of that, something is hurt. Whether it's personal side of their life is in balance, or maybe it's other interests are not balancing out, but that's one of the things. The other is people see potential. Sometimes, as you know, in this business, you can be being very successful on being active in the business, but you see that there's some potential out there that you could be doing maybe a little better or a little differently. And so this exercise will allow you to explore what that potential might be for you and whether a team is a solution for you to do that. And let's face it, everybody is looking to have more resources, right? More money into your pocket, and perhaps money that's being left on the table. We know that as an example of that. I'll have agents that will be so busy, they'll pick up the odd lead and it'll fall below the wayside because they were too busy chasing other business. And that might indicate that perhaps you need to reorganize your business, and whether it's a team or maybe it's just something you need to look at your processes, but that's another reason. So some of the best ways to identify what your kind of the gaps are in your business, to see what you identify what are the opportunities for you, is take a look at these items in your business. They're listed here on the left side of your screen. So sphere of influence. What I would kind of be looking at that is over the last perhaps year or two, what business did you perhaps not get? Like you always see, you see that listing that come up and it was, it's your past client or somebody that you knew in your sphere listed their house, and you go, why did that happen, right? And so the reason is because for whatever reason in your business, you weren't able to even keep in touch with them enough to ensure that you were top of mind, high enough to get their business. Now, there's always the odd case where maybe there was some other reason why they didn't deal with you. But so that would be identifying a way of saying, I think there's some opportunity that I could put more resources in my business and get more of that business. So I would look at these items, whether it's for sale by owners, even in your geographic farm, if you've got an area that you work specifically in, you can penetrate that market perhaps more. That would be an opportunity to say, maybe we could be looking at a team. So this is a good little exercise that you can kind of do a bit of a triage to see, is your business ready for some transformation? And so the next thing is, say, just because perhaps there's some business opportunities that are out there, you also have to be honest with yourself to say, do you have the skill set and the mindset to be the business leader for a team? Because being your business leader for yourself as a real estate person, that's pretty easy, because you're just going to take care of the business that you need to do, and you're your best judge. And if you're not doing your job, but it's not really impacting as many other people, perhaps directly anyways. So that's a little easier. But once you get to having a team responsibility, you have to think a little bit more, about your strengths as this business person. And a good question is, I always ask people come to me when I was a managing broker, they say, Gary, I want to set up a team. And I say, okay, great. Well, let's look at your business plan. And 9 times out of 10, they didn't even have that. So I think that's a start. That's where you really have to start. And I find over the last few years, real estate salespeople have become much better at ensuring that they have a business plan, and one that they actually follow. So this is positive, but this is where you have to start. So taking a look at your business plan, seeing what its objectives are in the kind of the short, medium, and long term. And then basically being able to say, okay, based on that, let's take a look at what we want to, what are the opportunities for growth. And so once you've started putting a little thought into, is there opportunity for growth, and am I the person to want to do this? Then you have to start thinking, well, if I'm going to put some kind of business plan in place as a team, what's that going to look like? And this is where we start talking a little bit about the HR side of things. And I did mention earlier that there's really no hard, fast organizational structure for a team. There's not just, it's not like one blueprint, say, okay, here, take this blueprint for this team. Here's how this is structured here, and you can take it over to another business and drop it in and it works perfect. So that's just not the case. Everyone has a little unique structure, but there's a good system that I'm going to walk you through today that I think will help you go through all the steps, point by point, to get to the point where you can develop your own team that would work for you. And it really is this basically this 6-step path for us. And we're going to look at defining goals, kind of establishing your time frame around accomplishing those goals. The next step would be communicating the plan to the people around you, because that's really important. If your team doesn't understand the plan, it's really highly unlikely they're going to be able to execute on it. And then, making sure that you're taking check of your inventory as far as your human resources and your training and the skills that you're providing to your team. Kind of looking at an analysis of the marketplace with the SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then really getting going with your business. So from defining your goals activities, this is where you have to have your business planning done. So today is not the day we're going to get into an extensive business planning exercise, but we do have great resources in the Century 21 brand for you to get your business plan structured and properly set up for you. And, I can't encourage everybody enough to make sure they're doing that. The second is to really take your plan and say, okay, what are my goals in it? And then we take a look at the opportunities perhaps in your business that you're missing. This is where you would insert that into your next couple of years and say, okay, what is the possible business, quantifiable business that I could perhaps get by setting up growth in my business? And then from there, you can kind of back it up and say, okay, these are the number of transactions that kind of equates to by knowing what the average kind of commission dollars are in your marketplace. And then, using industry averages, how many appointments to get to an appointment, and then really taking it right down to how many contacts a day. And this becomes really important on your weekly work plan, right? So this is the kind of exercise you need to do to kind of start quantifying what those goals are. And then once you kind of get that idea in place, you have to start thinking about, okay, now who do I need to be communicating this with, and how are we going to get this all accomplished? We did some research on this, so we have some information that we're going to share with you that comes out of the U.S., but I think it is really relevant to our business in Canada as well. And this is a little bit about trying to help you communicate the message. I can't advise you enough to start with your broker. Your broker has a tremendous wealth of knowledge in this area, and they're there to help you grow your business. And I think that before you get off and running in the wrong direction, make sure you take some of the work that we've encouraged you to do earlier today already to your broker and sit down and say, this is really what I'm looking to do. And, and part of communicating what your plan is you need, as a salesperson, have a real clear idea of what your kind of value proposition is. Why are you doing what you're doing? And be really, passionately strong, understanding what that is. And then when you have that down, you got to get into being able to state that and be able to summarize it and be able to communicate it in a really effective way. So definitely high on the list is make sure that you book that meeting with your broker on doing that. Then once you start to get into looking at how you're going to execute and set up and create your team, I think you kind of need to you kind of have to have an idea of what maybe you're good at now, or what your business does really well now, and perhaps what are the opportunities that your business could take advantage of. And just as an example, I put business planning here. So, if you're already doing business planning, obviously, that's a good strength. And then, but if you're not, then you have to identify, where could I go to kind of avail myself to this resources. And so, on the left, you got broker, and you got, whether it's other individuals or other people, or your sales team around you. These are the different sources that you can identify where that resource might be. And as I mentioned, in the brand, we have some really great business planning. And then I've identified on the other side, there's an opportunity where I can prove. I mentioned before that you noticed that some of your sphere of influence were listing property and not dealing, maybe you were missing that business. So I think that's an opportunity to identify. And then you look at that particular example and say, okay, where can I access resources currently that can assist me in building a system around, prospecting to your sphere of influence? And your brands and your brokers are really your key places to start with that. So that's an exercise that you need to go through to identify the things that you're really particularly strong at, and then the other items of the opportunities that you can do. Then like in any business planning exercise, you should do strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and really do a good scan so you're not missing anything. This way you can make sure that you're kind of covering all the bases, because we've talked a lot about things that are kind of internal to you as a real estate person and as a team leader, but you also have to kind of take a look at those external things. Some of your competition, what are they doing? What's happening in your marketplace? How are there other teams that are being well received in the marketplace? Are there growth opportunities? What segments of the market are growing? Are you doing, is there new condo starts, condominium buildings that have been starting in your community, and you perhaps haven't had maybe a large share of that, so that might be a good opportunity to take a look at. And then obviously threats as well. Always going to be looking at what could be a risk in your business. And then you kind of start getting into some of the fun stuff, which are going to be a little scary for others, but this is where you're going to start to say, okay, I have a concept. I know there's some business opportunities for me. I'm comfortable with wanting to get more involved and be responsible and lead a group of people. And now I have to say, okay, what's that going to look like? How am I going to structure that? And there's, like I said, there's many different forms of teams. There's a simple, I used to see them, I call them partnerships more than a team, I guess, but I would see two agents get together and they would come to me and they'd say, Gary, I want to form a team. And, oh, okay. What do you think? Well, and they'd say, Jill and I are thinking of just getting together because when Jill goes away, I'm going to cover for her business and vice versa. I'm like, well, okay, well, that's good. That's a good partnership agreement. And if you can work with the details on that, that works well. So, that's one example. And, that the husband and wife team are pretty similar to that as well. You get agents and administrative assistants. So you have a lead agent, and they may bring on somebody to help them with a variety of duties. And in the workbook that we do have in the area for you, there's some suggested kind of roles and duties for some of these positions. So you might want to take a look at that later to assist you with those kind of documents. But another agent team that we see set up is where we have the lead agent, who's kind of like we call it the rainmaker, or the folk, basically the individual who's generating the business. And that individual creates a team with a bunch of other licensed agents around them doing specific things. That's where we're seeing a lot of growth in teams. And then you'll see a team like that add a particular administration or some support on a technical nature. So let's get into some of those more details on what that looks like. So here's one model where you've got basically the team leader, and they saw a need and opportunity in their business, and then they added some administrative assistant to help them. So perhaps they were looking at their business and they found themselves getting maybe a little bogged down on some of the maybe it's listing paperwork. I know I used to have to chase real estate people a lot for documentation on listings, especially big producers. They're all their time's really busy, so they're always moving on to the next transaction. But this is something that you can help take a little bit of a burden off their plate by setting up an administrative assistant. That team leader now has more free time to deal where they do really well, which is helping their customers. And then in this particular example, you can see that they've also identified an opportunity that a team leader, especially one that gets strong with listings, a lot of team leaders tend to be big, we call them listers. So they're dealing with a lot of listings, and sometimes they'll just say they really don't want to get into dealing with the buyers. It's something that they do occasionally, but there's probably lost business there. That's where we identified perhaps there's some business that we could pick up. They can add, whether it's one or a couple combination of buyer agents to perhaps start picking up that lost business, right? And then as you can see this model, they added a transaction coordinator later. I'll get into a little bit of a discussion around what those roles could look like. But in most examples in teams, there's a lot of crossover between the roles of, especially the administrative assistant and the transaction coordinator. There's a lot of kind of meshing and crossover that happens there. So that's not uncommon. So another team is kind of structured kind of like this. So a little differently, where they've structured the buyer's agent to have somebody coordinating that, more of a coordinator, and then some sub agents working underneath that individual, and the team leader just kind of removed from that. And then these teams can scale up quite large. You may be familiar, there's some teams in the country that have, you're talking north of 50 people on a team. So you have to get a little more sophisticated with your organizational structure with that, and also beef up your administrative and transaction coordinator role. So those are all things to be looking at when you're doing this. And so beyond getting kind of beyond that there's more responsibilities you can get into depending on the size of your team. Smaller teams, I mentioned already, you get a lot of sharing in these roles or combination of these roles, because you can't have that distinct separation just because of the volume of business. But yeah, obviously the larger teams do get into a little bit more of that. So here's some interesting information. So this was gathered basically from did I click on that? There we go, back to the small teams. So this is I've got a survey result. It's just about 100 team leaders across North America. And this is teams that did less than 50 transactions. And below, in the graph below, this just shows you how the jobs descriptions are spread out amongst the teams in the kind of 50 or lower transactions. As you can see, it's dispersed over, quite a few of them are just buyers agents, listing specialists. Combined those two roles, admin, those are kind of your top, and as you can see, it also below tells you the kind of the average number of people that are kind of doing those roles in these teams. But most of it that we learned from this, from talking to these teams, was over 40% of these teams started with adding an administrative assistant first, or a buyer or agent role. So those are the top. That's the top kind of avenue that teams start to evolve in. And then when we get to kind of as the team starts to grow, we look at it a little differently. And now, teams that are maybe up to about 100 transactions, again, you still see the roles being distributed over a couple of people. There's not specific individuals just doing one thing. You might have, you start seeing the marketing coordinator, those numbers come up, and transaction coordinator number comes up as well. But the other category is up as well, if you noticed. And really the other is where you're getting into roles and duties of people on your team that are doing lots of things, whether that's some of the marketing, maybe some help with the photography, and maybe it's some writing some of the diet scripts and the descriptions for MLS properties. Concierge of services we're seeing, where you have an individual that's kind of taking care of the client needs from inbound requests. Then you get people dealing with leads, whether those leads are coming in off listings or the leads are coming off buyers, how those leads are being managed and incubated. You start to get a little more precise with who's doing that, especially as you get into the larger teams. These are teams doing north of 100 deals per year. These teams, they started by focusing on adding a transaction coordinator. It was kind of the one of the key people that they added, and then after that, they started adding buyer agents to their teams. So obviously, somebody doing north of 100 transactions, somebody to coordinate and manage that administration part of the business would be a big relief to a busy real estate agent. So again, you can see here where the other category at the bottom in the graph, again, is still quite predominant, but you can see, larger teams, they have about just over 4 people that are kind of combined doing listing and buyers agents. So that's just an average of the 100 or so teams that were interviewed for this. Almost 3/4 of them have somebody designated to doing transaction coordinating. So that role starts to grow more important as the team grows, and that kind of makes a lot of sense. So let's look at a little bit about how this is structured from a commission point of view. If you're a team lead and you're thinking about setting up your team, it's going to be really important to you to set up the proper financial structure to make it worthwhile, not only for you from a return on your investment point of view, but also to help you in the growth and recruiting of your team. So what I want to really point out here is that this first graph is a graph that shows the commission structure that team agents, so the agents that you're bringing on your team as team members, those are the commission rates that you're setting for listings that they're bringing to the table. And so you can see quite a bit of a conventional split across the board here. I'd say predominantly over 50% is in that kind of 70, 30, 75, 25 range. That's being offered to those agents. Now, I will say the US data, they definitely are more on the conventional side, so less focused on the office fees and transaction fees, and they're a little heavier focused on straight up commission rates. There are also some sliding scales. A smaller percentage of it was a sliding scale commission rate, but for the most part, the majority of their team members that they're bringing on are looking at some kind of traditional split in their marketplace. And I got agents say to me, "Well, what should that be, Gary? What's the commission split that I should be?" And you really need to know what that is in your regional market. Like you really need to, it's a very regional. There's variations across this country that are it's quite immense. So you have to really understand what that is in your marketplace to be competitive. And then you take it from there. And then you have to do a good analysis on if that's profitable and how that's going to work for you. So moving forward to the next this kind of split of commissions taken in the survey, which was on this is where the team leader is generating the business and what is the split that you're offering to people. As you can see, this changes up a little bit more. There's definitely propensity moving towards more of a 50-50 concept here. So not that all, there's still, there's 56% of the graph is there, but there's still a large portion of it is more split, evenly, as opposed to, favorable to the team, like to the team member. This is makes a lot of sense because as far as the generation of the business and the structure and the resources and assets being used to create the business, all the risk is at the team leader. So that's why you want to create a team is to acquire that. So when I'm coaching team leaders, when I was coaching team leaders, I really have a heart to heart with them about not giving away the wrong amount of commission on business that they're really generating, and understand truly how the business works. So you can see that that's how this is transpiring across teams in North America. Teams are putting great systems in place and generating business, and they're attracting teams, because of the training and the business that's available and the opportunity to work with the team. They're not attracting the team members just because of commission rate. And that's a really important thing to understand because that's not your value proposition. It can't be. So just important to understand that. So just looking at this is taking a look at business generated by the team leader on the buyer side. And you can see even higher split percentages of splits closer to 50-50. In this case. So just kind of supporting the point that I'm making. So with all those kind of things in the back of your mind, now, you got to be thinking, well, okay, what's my team going to look like for me? And here you can see a little diagram here. You've got your team leader and he's, okay, I need some admin support. And I need some buyer's agents. So I'm going to list some agents here and I got a transaction coordinator. And you can see he or she's got different years assigned. So it's kind of give you like a map for your trajectory for your next 5 years because you're not going to build it all overnight. That your team's going to evolve as you grow and you grow your business. So it's just a good example of perhaps what that looks like. And so you just step by step, what do I need to do next? Who do I need to add? And then how do I find that individual? And we're going to get into a little bit about how you do that as well. So, this is where a little bit of a checkup for yourself, right? Now that you've identified that, a team could be advantageous for you to be set up in, or it could be advantageous for you to join a team. But as the team leader, if this is truly the role that you're going to pick for yourself, I would say that being a team leader and being a real estate salesperson, there are some overlap in skills, but there are also some things that are not generally naturally coming to some people. So you kind of have to understand what the gaps are for yourself here, right? And a lot of it's going to be an attitude, right? Do you really enjoy helping people grow their business and being part of that? Most brokers, this is a strong suit for them. Very passionate about helping people grow their business, and so that's a strong point, right? And so and not everybody's skill sets are the same. So you just got to identify what the gaps are for yours, because then you can deal with that. Because just because perhaps maybe you might have a weakness, it doesn't mean you can't be a team leader. It just means understand what your weakness is and perhaps bring in the proper resource to manage that for you. There's just there's so many examples of what that could be, but just understand what those limitations are for yourself. So then really now the decision is to kind of decide, how do I find these people to make my team so successful that the way that we want it to be? This is not easy. Brokers spend a large part of their days recruiting and growing businesses. And so being a team leader means you're going to become a bit of a recruiter. And not only are you recruiting from a sales point of view to recruit as people who are going to be successful with your team with sales, but you're also going to have to recruit administrative people and back-end folks, marketing people. And so that's not always a skill set that real estate people have either. So this is where you're going to need to see what kind of gaps you have and find out how to help identify by properly sourcing these people, conducting a proper interview, hiring the right people, all kinds of best practices there. But definitely start with your broker from that point of view. So starting with your brokers, they may have some examples to help you with this, how to place some ads when you're looking to hire people, what kind of contracts do you want to use, whether it's independent contractor agreements for some of your people, or it's going to be, you may be getting into employment relations with people. You need to understand that and how it works for you. And so definitely consult with your broker on exactly how that works, and run it by your legal counsel as well. So how do you find these folks? Usually in your sphere of influence, your network. There's some really good people you probably already know. This is just like sales, whether you're going to get a listing or you're going to talk to somebody about joining your team. Same skill set involved, understanding what your value proposition is, being able to communicate that really well, qualifying that individual, and then making them the offer if you want to have them on board, right? So very similar process to sales. So these are things that we're good at. My warning would be, don't hire the first person that you run out and find, because it's a little, you really need to make sure you're doing your homework and go through a proper process before making the final decision, and make sure that there's clarity on what the roles are going to be and how that is all going to look. So next, once you've kind of getting your team going, you need to start planning for getting them organized, and that's having a regular set of whether it's meetings or a way to keep you on your path. The best way is to have a couple set of meetings. One is more kind of operational, which is kind of your weekly, or what's going on today, who are you talking with, who's in the pipeline, how's that going, what do you need, that kind of thing. And then on a larger scale, kind of the bigger picture is more of maybe a monthly, or maybe every 6 weeks, where you kind of take a look at what the bigger picture is. Are we hitting our targets? Where do we need improvement? How are we measuring this? And how is that going? Really important not to get the two mixed up, because I do find a lot of times we'll have our daily, you have teams will have their daily meetings and they get sidetracked on what really should be maybe a more strategic discussion. Just take that item and just park it and just say, oh, we'll put that on the agenda for the next one. What you don't want to get tied down to is a meeting that gets really lengthy on something that you're not really dealing with operationally day to day. That's going to detract people from wanting to attend your meetings. People like to know that there's a set time, we're going to get in, do our business, and then we're going to be out. So definitely from a meeting 101, make sure that you're doing that. There's a couple of suggestions on looking at how you're dealing with things. As a leader, you're going to be dealing or have conflicts. You're going to you want to share success. You want to reward people. You're going to have to get stronger at financials and budgeting, and also just being the leader in general. So these are all things that you want to make sure you're coaching and getting coaching on, are getting yourself prepped up and doing a good job at, because they can go off the rails if you're not paying attention to many of these things. And then once you started identifying what your plan is, you've started to find some great people to join your team. It's not good enough just to find them. Now you have to make sure they get onboarded and become part of your team and understand their role and know what their job is. And so, all these things need to be communicated to them in a very clear fashion. You have to have a written plan that you can communicate with your team members, and that your team members can understand what's expected of them and their tasks from day to day, so that they can continue to meet the team's objectives. A lot of times I find what happens, a team leader sets up their team, gets going, and then, a couple months later, they're in my office as the broker, and they're going, yeah, it's just not working out, Gary. I got this team, and they're not doing what they want them to do. And I said, well, what's their job description? Let's say, and they go, well, what do you mean job description? So this is where clarity comes in. If the people didn't even know what they need, you expected of them, how do you expect them to go do it, right? So just make sure that they have the training that they need, the tools and the systems and the support for that. Then as you get you get better at this and setting up your team and better taking advantage of the market opportunities, and you identified that maybe there was some buyers leads that we were missing. Now we've got a good system in place. We're actually capturing those leads, we're growing the business, we're tracking it, and we're seeing that we're hitting the targets that we were saying. That gets exciting, because you're building something that's really rewarding for you and your team to see, and it'll start to get some momentum to itself. And so as you're moving along in this kind of continuum, you want to make sure that you're kind of ticking off, you're tracking where you are. Tracking is really important, not only financially from your budgeting point of view, but also from your target for your business point of view, and your customer service and all those things. You want to make sure that you're hitting and have those goals kind of being out 3-5 years from there, and reviewing them at a regular time. And so this where it gets exciting is that as you start to grow things, you got to set that leap of faith. A lot of people, from a sales point of view, I was like, well, no, I can do it better myself. I need to go out and do that listing appointment because I know how to do it the way I do it. The key is to build the trust with quality people and be confident knowing that now your teammates are capable of going out because they have a clear vision of what your value proposition and your mission and your goals of your team is, and they can go because you've given them the training and the skill set, and they can go out into the marketplace and deliver that as it were perhaps you doing it. That's when you get into the sweet spot, and then where you see teams across the country that are really knocking it out of the park. That's where teams are being really successful. So it's a process to get there. Hopefully today we've given you a bit of a roadmap and an exercise that'll allow you to go step by step to identify the things that you need to do to consider, is the team for you? And if it is, how can I set it up, and who are the partners I need to make that happen? And so that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation portion. Lee, I'm happy to take, I don't know if there are any questions, but I'm happy to take any. I'll leave that with you.
Hi, Gary. I'm just turning my volume up here. We've had a couple of questions come in that I think I'd like to ask you. If you do have any other questions, please put them in the Facebook comment section and we will get to them. But we have 3 questions so far. What kind of agent's character is suited best to be most productive to a team, for a team?
You just cut out on me. So I heard what type of agent, and then it cut out on me. So
what type of agent's character is suited best or most productive for a team?
What agent character is best suited?
Like, what kind of person are you looking for? Is there a good personality type? Is there a good, a good drive that the person has? Is there anything that you can articulate that will help people find good team members?
Yeah, I think the key message that I guess I would always advise people is to find compatibility. So I may be not able to say to you what particular trait are you looking for, but you definitely want compatibility in the style that you are, because if there's not synergy and there's not a connectivity in how things are done, that can create problems to begin with. But then going into more, I think you're looking for people who are willing and ready to learn, and are hungry for knowledge. People who are hungry to really practice things at a higher level, because I do find a lot in the real estate community. There's a lot of individual salespeople who have gone in the business, and then they've struggled to really find their way. And I think if there's an appetite to really improve, that's a good candidate for a team. So hopefully that answers that. But compatibility is number one. You got to start with compatibility. If you're not a fit for each other, it could be a problem.
Shared values are always key, and that actually leads us into the next question. What if someone still has a full-time job? You said that you may like them, you may have shared values, you may be getting used to each other, but what if they have another job as well?
Yeah, no. So this comes up quite a bit, and I'll give you my take on it, and it's not for everybody, but I always like to believe that people had a path to becoming full-time in the business, that there's a proper course for people to, people need to transition, I guess. And if I felt that there was a good a willingness on the individual to want to transition from being part-time into being full-time, because as a team leader, I would want them to be full-time. But I would be prepared to take a certain individual based on who they are if they had a path. And I would agree to a timeline for that, and how we're going to get there. And then want them to be committed to that. And if there was a meeting of the minds, I would move forward with somebody, depending on their role on the team, obviously. But I think that I've seen some fantastic real estate agents who started as part-time people because the reality is they had to have other type of income, and then they transitioned to be top salespeople. So don't I don't know if throw the baby out with the bathwater, but don't lose a good opportunity for somebody who you could maybe really coach and then earn their trust and a commitment to you, right?
The next question is certainly one that will depend on individual situations, but I'm wondering if you can give some advice to help people make the right decision. Is it better to have a higher split and pay monthly fees, or have them responsible for the fees and a lower split?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a little bit of that is going to depend on your marketplace. So if you're, in a marketplace where you see more fees, if there's more transaction fees and more agent monthly fees, I believe as a team leader that I would take all those fees and I would pay them as a team leader. That'd be part of my structure. That doesn't mean that's the way it has to be. I just think that makes more sense from my point of view. I would want to bring the agent in on more a traditional split package, do the coaching, have them hit the milestones and hit targets. And if they're not able to do that, then there's going to be a period of time where we're going to have a chat and say, geez, we've set up those targets, and if we can't get you doing this kind of work, then maybe it's not a good fit, right? So I'd rather be structured that way. But I just found in my experience, I've seen teams set up on the fees. What happens is a lot of new agents or people who are on teams don't want to commit to those kind of monthly fees, and so I think I would try to stay away from them as a team leader. But that's just my take.
Our next couple of questions are related, all about the longevity of a team. How long does a team typically stay together? Should you be putting that in a contract when someone joins a team? Should there be a probation period? What can you say about setting boundaries around how long you're going to be a team?
Yeah, so I'm glad this question came up, because I didn't really get into it too heavily. But if you're going to set up a team or some kind of partnership in any degree, if you didn't have an agreement in place, whether it was for your partnership or your team, I wouldn't let you, as a broker, I wasn't going to let you move forward until it was done, because this is the most important thing, to have clarity in the role. So, definitely need to have written agreements that structure what everybody's role is on the team and how that looks, how long that is for, And one of the most important things that needs to be in there, especially with a team, and it's more like it's agent A and agent B getting together as a team to form a team. You need to have clarity as to what happens if you're going to dissolve the team. Because as a broker, I don't want to be a divorce attorney. And I say that I don't want real estate people coming to me and say, well, we can't be a team anymore. We don't have any agreement on how to do this. Gary, you need to figure it out for us. And I'd say, there's no way I'm figuring that out for you. You need to have that agreement in place ahead of time. And some examples of that, you need to, how are we going to deal with the business you brought in? Who were clients that we dealt with together? And how are we dealing with that future business once we dissolve the partnership or the team? So definitely have those things in writing. Go to your broker as a resource to start. But definitely have clarity on all that with the job descriptions and duties and assignments and things like that attached to them. Lee, did I cover all the points that you had?
I believe you did there. Thank you. The next question, will a team leader distribute the commission to the whole team?
No, so that's a great question. So in most provinces in Ontario, the commission's all going to be dealt with the broker. So the broker is going to be the one that collects the fee, just a normal, and the team leader will have a structure with the broker that how that's all going to be divvied up according to the contracts and agreements that the team leader has with the team members. So yeah, the commission comes from the broker, just like it would if you were a salesperson as well. The individual team leaders do not get into distributing that.
Okay, our final question shows quite a bit of self-awareness here, but if I can't manage myself as an agent, should I join a team?
No, I wouldn't say not. I wouldn't say necessarily you should. And you might not want to tell your team leader that you're having a problem. But maybe it's self-awareness is the first step towards rectifying. A team's not for everybody. But there are some people that could thrive really well on a team, and I saw that over time. I saw folks who came into the business who kind of were floundering around, not really finding their way. And then they joined a team and they got clarity of purpose, because what happened with the team is the team leaders set really straightforward objectives for the team members. And I find in real estate, this is the only business sometimes you can get into where once you're in it, nobody tells you what to do. You can't be on your own unless you have a great broker that's keeping track of you. So if you need that, I think that can really help you learn some great skills and become a better realtor. But you could also do that on your own if you want to really kind of kick yourself in the butt and move forward with that.
All right, Gary, thank you very much. And we will look forward to welcoming you back on Thursday. You're going to sort of wrap up everything that's happened in the last 21 days.
That's been giving me a headache, Lee.
Yeah, 20 minutes, half an hour, right? Everything that's happened in the world in the last couple of weeks.
I haven't been able to sleep at night because of that one.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to talking to you on Thursday. Absolutely. But before then, for everyone else, we have a couple of more webinars. On tomorrow, we are welcoming Arian Bezai. He's talking about 8 factors to manage your personal finances. So I think that will be really useful information for a lot of you about some of the things that you can be organizing and arranging right now when it comes to personal finances. Then I will be with you on Wednesday, and we're talking about the Century 21 Marketing Center. That's when you go into your Google account, you scroll down and click on Marketing Center. So I'm going to talk about some of the tools available to Century 21ers there and how you can make use of them in this time. Because I know a lot of you aren't going out door knocking and putting door hangers on people's doors. So what are some of the tools that you can use and repurpose to keep doing your business at this time? And so then again, of course, we'll have Gary back on Thursday, and then we're kicking off our next 21 days on Friday. We are welcoming Rick Davidson, who's going to do a fireside chat with Chiyoko Kakino about mental and physical health during this time. So a jam-packed week ahead, and we will be publishing the schedule for the following 4 weeks a little bit later on this week. So thank you all for joining us. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye-bye.